Z.
We're two divorced.
Well, I'm still separated.
Okay. Working parents.
We talk about all the things you get to deal with when your marriage ends, like
Co-parenting.
dating,
Running a household all by yourself.
how early is too early for a good hard drink,
Or a glass of wine. And how do you keep it all together after everything fell apart?
This is
Demarried Life.
Hello, everyone. Here with us today, we have the lovely and invaluable Virginia Ronning. Virginia has worked with both myself and Erin through our respective separations/co-parenting challenges. And I can say that without a doubt, Virginia saved me more than once from going down a mistaken path, let's just say, during what was a really difficult time for me and my ex and our kids. And I know he also feels the same way. We really, really loved working with you.
Beyond the co-parenting magic, Virginia is also a certified executive coach and a registered clinical counselor. So she's got both down pat, which just blows my mind. Her areas of focus are growth mindsets and resiliency work for clients of all ages and situations. What caught our eye was specifically resilience in times of uncertainty. And wow, if there was ever a time when we needed Virginia, it's right now. So we asked you guys for your questions. Thank you so much for sending them in. And we have a special two-parter. This is part one. We're going to be talking about what happens when you're divorced and solo over the holidays. Part two is going to be co-parenting over the holidays. So with that, we'll start into part one. But first, Virginia, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for the intros. That's very lovely.
Well, you did all the work. We just got to read it. So
Yeah. So when we were sort of crowdsourcing some questions and topics that had come up, either, just from our community and our audience, and then also between us and conversations we've had with others who we know, we kind of grouped the questions together and we noticed a couple of themes sort of seem to emerge. And as Erin already pointed out, there's this idea around loneliness and isolation and change. And specifically with the holiday season approaching, whatever holiday it is that you celebrate, obviously these sort of emotions can be amplified, particularly if it's your first year on your own. And this year being an exceptionally difficult year, I think, for most, that really brings a lot of these challenges to the surface. So we did have a question around loneliness, particularly on Christmas morning, was this person's question. The person said, I'm scared to wake up alone on Christmas morning to an empty house. What can I do to distract myself? And I know I definitely felt that way. And I know I'm not the only one.
Yeah. And Dee, is this when the children are going to be away? Is this the reference, or is it just generally?
We have listeners in both camps. I think some who the kids will be away, but I think in this case, focusing on just the people that are used to having that special partner, and that's not there this year, and it's a different setup.
Right. And I think that one of the things that I find very interesting in the work that I'm doing is that this is an exceptional time because of COVID as well, because normally in the sort of some of the growth and development and transformational conversations I would have with clients, it would be all around what else can you do? How else can you fill your time? What can you be planful and mindful about what you'd like to do? And of course, with COVID, you can't just go out and have coffee with a friend, or Christmas Day is even harder because many things will be closed. But I still think that to be intentional, to have a plan, to be very, very aware and mindful that this might be, and understandably could be a very difficult time, is to then come up, maybe even make a list of all the things that they love doing, what gives them joy, what lights their fire, lights them up. I think of a moth to a flame, is something that they get really excited about. And maybe it is that they sit and watch a Christmas movie on Christmas morning, or they phone a dear friend in another part of the world and have a set that up. But I think it has to be an intentional setup so that they're not suddenly sitting there alone on Christmas morning. And whether it's that they connect with other people or something that they love to do, I think that would be really important.
In our last episode, Nicole Smith was talking about her dream being just locking herself in a hotel room and watching The Crown, like beginning to end. So that like a binge session, something like that, right? Saving something like that for Christmas.
And I mean, if it means a little chocolate, go for it. If it means a little bit of all the things that you love to do, I think that that's really important. But the other piece that I just want to add is I think there's a little bit in here about mindset. And I think it's true for all of us. It's true for me as well, that if I walk into something with a mindset of I'm so lonely, like I've even had to reframe. I feel alone. I feel this, I feel that, especially with the time of COVID. I don't have as much time with my children, is to really do an intentional reframe of the time I have is magnificent. Because it does alter the brain. It does alter the way the neural pathways go in the brain. And it does help us to be more, have a more elevated mood. Because the last thing we want is for people to nosedive. And unfortunately, there are going to be a lot of people alone on Christmas morning.
Mm-hmm. And I think if of all years to be alone on Christmas, this is the one where you're really, really, really not alone in it, because there are going to be so many people. You're not alone this year. Like you are alone, but many, many, many people are alone together.
I think you're raising a really good point. And also get out and get exercise, get a walk in, go to Mount Doug, go to a beautiful place in the city that you love, a beach, because there will be a lot of people out walking. So at least you don't have that feeling of complete isolation, obviously within safety and 6 feet and everything else, but to give yourself the sense that you are connected, even though like we are all connected in this very, very difficult time.
I was just wondering, is there a time and a place to feel okay with sitting with that sadness and that loneliness? I mean, I know mindset is important and we want to reframe, but is it okay to chalk this one up to a bad year and feel sad on Christmas? It's just, it's not going to be a good day. Or I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, Dee, I do think that's really important. And I'm glad you raised it. I think that what I would want to be, and what I would suggest to somebody is maybe let themselves have 5 minutes of really sitting in it, or maybe 15 if they feel very strong. Maybe do some journal writing, light a candle, really be in it, and it might be very evocative emotionally.
I like that. 8 a.m. to 8:15. Cry with coffee.
Yeah, I'm allowed.
I'm allowed.
Yeah, 15 to 10:30. Watch a Christmas movie.
Right. Perfect. But then I would then be very intentional again, because we can get in, and I don't want to use this word. Well, I'm going to say it, wallowing, but and I don't mean that in the judgmental way that it sounds. What I mean is that we can get kind of stuck in a loop unless we have a plan and say, I'm going to sit with my coffee or my tea and we'll do some journal writing or reflecting and really just breathe into it. The other thing is to focus on breath. Of course, is really important. So as the emotion arises, to really focus on the breath. One of the things that I learned from some mindfulness training is that every emotion has a natural lifespan of 90 seconds, which is fascinating when you think about it. But if you notice it like a wave, just coming in, it's like a wave coming in and then it's there. And if you let yourself really be in it for that moment, it will just pass out again. Right? Not pass out, but
I know what you mean. And I felt that because I tried really hard when I was feeling sad a few years ago at Christmas time, or just sort of around that time, letting myself feel it for a little while. It didn't last nearly as long as I thought it would. But it seemed better than avoiding it and attempting to distract myself and pretend it wasn't there.
I'm really glad you brought it up, because I think that's probably one of the most important pieces. The other thing is there are tons of great videos on TED Talks and YouTube. And I've actually got a list I can send you after that just to distract the mind. If you can't do it just sitting quietly, distract with one of these mindfulness practice or an encouraging and inspiring TED Talk. There's some brilliant ones out there, as you know.
We talk about movies sometimes on here, or a lot. And all I think about right now is that scene on Bridget Jones' Diary, the All by Myself scene. Remember when she's in her pajamas?
I used to have PJs just like those.
Yeah.
I was like, oh no, what am I manifesting here?
But it was a good scene. I felt that way before.
Well, the other thing I want to highlight is that this can actually be a transformative experience for somebody, especially if they let themselves be there, be present in it, but then to celebrate it, celebrate the accomplishment of the resilience of being able to sit through something you did not think you'd be able to sit through. And really part of it is giving yourself a major pat on the back for for being able to do that.
So maybe that's 8:15 a.m. on Boxing Day morning is throw yourself a little party over your coffee that you made it through Christmas
That's
Day and
right.
celebrate that.
No pity party. Well, you can have a pity party for 15 minutes. And
Mini pity party.
Mini pity
Well,
party.
it could be like a victory party for making it through Christmas Day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking about traditions, how's that for a segue? Next question that we have that came in. How can I create new traditions? If you had old traditions with your partner, how can you create new traditions without it being feeling really forced? And when we do have isolation, we can't just, do a brunch with our girlfriends or something like that. What would be your suggestions in cultivating new traditions?
I'm going to speak, first of all, outside the paradigm of COVID. I would go to what you love. I would make a list of the things you love. What do you love most? Who do you love? Who do you want to be surrounded by? What do you want to do? What are some of the traditions that you had that you did love? The other thing is, if children are involved, include them in that. That could be kind of a fun thing or enjoyable thing to do and growth oriented thing for them to be part of what do we want? Let's have one new tradition this year, or something that's really special. That's us. It's our new family, our new constellation of our family.
I love that constellation.
Yeah. And then co-create it. And with the COVID, of course, in position of time and space and energy, who you're with, who you're able to be with. Fortunately, I have many friends in Ontario, so they're 3 hours ahead. So I can decide who I'm going to call when, depending on the timing. So, that's the kind of thing as well. If you have a Zoom call or a FaceTime or something else with somebody to really connect, it's not the same. We have a human need to be touched. And so that is definitely a big piece of it, but it ties into another thing is I wonder if part of the tradition could be about self-care.
Mm-hmm. And that thing, you feel it's selfish so often, this is your opportunity to just focus on nobody else but yourself for X amount of time.
Exactly. Do your nails, have a bubble bath, whatever it is to help. And maybe that becomes part of the tradition is anytime you have a special holiday that you're alone, it becomes a self-oriented task. And we know that if we're well, our kids will be well. We really know. I think that's, even though our kids do come first fundamentally, but if our self-care is top of the list, especially when they're not there, then just think about how calm and peaceful we'll be when they come home.
And one thing that really helped me, you're talking about the need to be touched, is if you're an animal person, having a dog, having a cat, having a parakeet, whatever it might be, there's something to be said for having something to care for. I also have plants, but they're not doing so well. But the dog is fine. But there is something to be said for that. And it was interesting. I went to look at, my boyfriend and I were just looking at kittens just to taunt ourselves. And there's none available because everyone's adopting them, because everybody wants that little thing to take care of. But there's something to be said for, if there are foster animals available, foster some pets.
And everybody's home. So, this is one of the worries they had originally was, that people would be then going off to work, but it seems to be pretty steadfast.
I picked up one of my chickens the other day. Speaking of needing to be touched, it was so funny because I have hens. Well, Erin and I share them, but
I'm a deadbeat mom, but we won't get into that right now. Anyway,
my kids were at their dad's, and I hadn't really had any social contact, and I was feeding the hens, and then there was this one, and she was sitting on the roof of the little chicken coop, and I was just like, I had this urge. I'm like, I'm picking you up. They don't like to be picked up. They hate it. And the poor thing is, she just just resigned herself. She just hunched over and was just ready for it. And I just picked her up and held her. It's okay.
To be specific, I was talking about consensual cuddling with animals.
I think maybe on some level she knew that I cared.
She wanted it.
But I definitely got more out of it.
There's nothing wrong with stuffies too.
Exactly.
Find a special stuffy and there you go.
On those blankets, like me, I have so many throws on my my couch now. I always wrapped up, and then I got a weighted blanket it's just it's the weighted blankets.
The other thing too is not on Christmas Day, but of course massage and physio are still open. Thank goodness. Hope they stay that way. But if one needs to and can afford it, go and have a massage. I'm sure they may be booked now, but I think they're adhering to some very good safety protocols, and that could be important as well.
You made me think of something with your weighted blanket comment. It made me think about, and back to Virginia's point about writing a list of what you love and this sort of whole idea of reframing and the question about new traditions. And I was thinking, people who are out of, recently out of a relationship do have an opportunity to create some new traditions for themselves, given that they really now only have to think about what brings them joy. And I was thinking about the weighted blanket, which made me think about, even things like festive cushions. Who knows? Maybe before you were with a partner and they had opinions about how they liked to have the house set up. Maybe you celebrated different holidays. You weren't of the same faith. So, you couldn't have maybe you didn't want a Christmas tree and that person did, or the other way around, or you don't like skiing and you always had to go skiing. And this year you don't have to go skiing. And so you can do a new thing. And then that can become, actually a happy thing to look forward to year after year.
So liberating in a way, could be liberating. The other thing too is that, because I'm sure I'm aware that some of your listeners may not have a lot of money. And what I want to suggest is there are some wonderful consignment stores in the city that if you wanted to buy some new ornaments or something like that, that keep that in mind too, that makes it a little bit more affordable.
Yeah. Great options out there. So many fun things to learn how to do. I've been taking online courses, just sort of free online courses, just in different topics and just reading secondhand books and just enjoying it. And so I secretly don't tell my kids, but when I don't have them, I'm not sitting around missing them the entire time.
Not lonely. Not so lonely.
Well, this is one of the things that I've been suggesting is what have you always wanted to learn, like even for not just Christmas time. I don't know if you noticed, but right when COVID started, Harvard had about 10 courses online that were free. Now, they're not credit courses, but that doesn't matter. Japanese history and ancient ruins of blah, blah. And it was just such a great opportunity. How many times do you get to say you were a Harvard student?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. edX and Coursera both have great stuff available. And it's such so there are things, if you can bring yourself up emotionally enough to invest in, there's a lot of really cool things out there to learn and do.
It doesn't even need to be a heavy lift. I follow, or I used to follow when I was on social media, I followed a baker who was based in Washington, D.C. I think she's called like the Sweet Feminist. That's what she was called. And she do these live virtual baking classes free. And, all the recipes were really budget friendly. Almost everything, especially during the early days of the lockdown, she would scrape together stuff that most people would already have in their kitchen, but it was live. So you could really participate in these, bake-alongs. And I did a virtual cooking class the other night with Brad, Erin, one of Brad's cooking classes. He was a guest on a recent episode. But another fun thing that you can do with friends or family, really anywhere, as long as you've got access to the web and a kitchen you can use.
Okay, another question. My ex-in-laws were my only family. I want to reach out, but at the same time, I wonder if it's better to just leave things be. Should I ask my ex first or approach them directly? Should I do nothing or tear the Band-Aid off?
Well, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too, but I will share mine because thank you for sending me that question. I did have some thoughts about it. One of the first things that I think one would need to look at is the kind of relationship that the person has with their ex. Communication is my life. I mean, that's what I try to do really well. I try to teach it. I try to help guide people with it. But it does take two. So we don't know what the other person, how receptive the other person is. Find out how they feel about it and what parameters they would feel comfortable with it happening. That what guidelines they would want, boundaries that they would want to have in place, and then have that person make sure they stick with that.
Yeah, that's totally how I did it. Totally.
And did it work?
Yeah, it was perfect. I did exactly the right thing and it went perfectly.
You don't need me, you
really,
guys.
I don't. It was so good.
I think time is good, Erin. I mean,
I'm going to drink now. I'm just having water, but it's like ventriloquism, but lying.
How about you, Dee? What are your thoughts about that?
Time is important and it's definitely a factor. I mean, I think I generally agree with you that I think sort of depending on what went down and how it all went, I think once the dust settles, I mean, most people, generally are open to maintaining a bit of a relationship. And I guess it just really depends on the situation. But I think that I would definitely say that like you said, it takes two and it might take a little bit of time.
I think it's easier if there are children though, because then they are combination of those two sides of the family. But if if you don't have children and you just are connected as family to your ex's family, that would be more problematic, I would think. Yeah. Because there's no kids to sort of ease the awkwardness.
Yeah, because they are family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing is that I think one of the suggestions I was going to make was to start small. Just say, well, how about an hour? How about an hour this year? And then if it's really positive and optimistic for everybody, plus you say D time, by next year, it might be nothing. It might have rolled off everybody's back. And watch for triggers.
Yes.
In good communication and healthy relationship is watch for triggers, watch for language we use.
So in that sense, is it also maybe, I guess you can't, there's no point really talking about neutral locations and whatnot right now, just given sort of the COVID context, but, let's just fast forward this a year. Is this the sort of a situation where, if you're going to venture out and meet with your ex-partner's family, maybe you'd like to do it on sort of neutral ground versus inviting them over to your place or you going to theirs and maybe creating an uncomfortable situation for your ex.
Yeah. Even a walk, let's meet on such and such a beach and go for a walk. That might be a really nice alternative to keeping it neutral.
Oh, and I have a question for you. And this is actually related to someone who doesn't have children, but has dogs, and they're trying to have shared custody of the dogs. Any advice with that situation when it's not children, but it's pets?
I would come back to communication. Let's talk about it. Let's do what's best for the dogs. It's a tough one because there's a sense of ownership and especially when the relationship's breaking apart. And so if you can, I've got a sheet on cooperative parenting, and it
supply the same rules.
Yeah, it's a pyramid. I was going to send it to you later, but you're welcome to share it with your listeners. But I think those are some of the guidelines of just how can we make this happen? Can we make it happen? And if so, how? What are the respectful boundaries around it? And if we can't make it happen, then I think so much of all of these breakups are around grief and loss. And it's one of the most difficult, regardless of whether, with children, of course, it's hard as well, but, it is grief and loss. And so sometimes a little bit like you said earlier, Dee, about just sitting with our aloneness is sometimes to be able to just sit with our grief and say, it's time. It's time for me to move on. It's time for me to create new traditions. It's time for me to maybe get an animal of my own, and to not make the fight about the dogs like that. That's where, again, children get into difficulties when they're not children, but the situation gets really rough for kids, but also for those aspects as well.
That brings part 1 of our 2-part Divorced for the Holidays series to an end. Thank you so much for listening. Please join us next time for Virginia's advice on co-parenting for the holidays. That's going to be a good one. Thank you so much for making the time to listen. We know you have way too much going on.
If you can spare a little more time, though, please follow us on Instagram and Facebook at demarriedlife, or visit us at demarriedlife.com for all of our episodes, articles, and lots of other great ideas for living a post-married life that isn't a total shit show.
See you there.